former Deputy President of South Africa, Dr. Phumzile Mlambo Ngcuka, Minister of Public Enterprises, Minister Praveen Gordhan, Premier Bushi Mape, Premier David Makura, Excellencies, Director Generals, Dr. Thuli Madunsela, Mrs. Buzi Mabuza, Captains of Industry, our international guests present here, the Abler fraternity, ABN Group board members, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening, everyone, and all protocols observed. It is indeed an honor for me to welcome you to the 10th All Africa Business Leaders Awards 2022. We were unable to host these awards during COVID, but I'm delighted that we are here at Sun City to make up for lost time. The Abler Awards were set up a decade ago to honor ordinary men and women who, despite all the challenges and disruption, have taken extraordinary decisions to lead their organizations to glory. Their success is not just in profitability, but in championing transformation in all its forms, embracing change, adopting inclusivity, and becoming role models to future generations of business leaders. Before we get to the awards, on behalf of the ABN Group, I'd like to toast another important milestone that we've already talked about. This week marks the 15th anniversary of CNBC Africa, which was launched from Johannesburg on 1st June 2007. Thank you. Our incredible journey started in October 2004, when my partner Zafar Siddiqui and I arrived in South Africa with a vision to set up this historic media project that would, amongst other things, help to change the narrative of an emerging Africa, something that Premier Bushi Mape just talked about. An Africa that was then seen as a continent of despair. Over the last 15 years, we have championed African achievements and showcased the continent away from the old rhetoric of gloom to one of demographic dividend and unparalleled opportunity. We have traversed the globe from Davos, London, Washington, Singapore to Shanghai, acting as the ambassadors of the continent that is beyond doubt the fastest growing economic zone in the world. We are proudly the only Pan-African news network reaching 26 million homes that produces 8 to 10 hours of daily business content about Africa, by Africans, and for Africans. As we achieved all of this and more, the last decade has not been easy for us, particularly for our industry that has not only been impacted by the various economic crises, but also the disruption of the media industry in general and television in particular. Like everyone, we went through these challenges and have a fair share of battle scars. But the most important point is that we are here today together to celebrate this important day. There are many of you in the audience today who have been part of our growth as well as our history. Amongst many, the three important stakeholders who I would like to acknowledge are the Gauteng Provincial Government, who gave us a welcoming home in Johannesburg. Thank you, Premier Makura. The IDC, who invested in this dream, and Standard Bank. And Standard Bank for being our buffer whenever we were on thin ice. Thank you all for your belief and often timely support. Most of all, I thank our partner Sam Bembe and the management and staff of the ABN Group for all your commitment and hard work. Now, as an inclusive organization that has walked our talk on diversity, we have been led for most of this journey by incredible women. Representing our CNBC Africa and Forbes Africa teams today are two exceptional ladies, Roberta Naika and Renuka Methil, whom I'd request to please stand up and take a bow. Ladies and gentlemen, a big hand to them and to all the ExCo and staff members of the ABN Group. I would now like to talk briefly about the last 2 years. Before March 2020, when COVID hit our shores, we had witnessed the Gulf War in 1991, the Asian financial crisis in 94, the internet bubble burst in 2001, the financial crisis in 2008, and a few other intermittent hiccups. We have witnessed a downturn in South Africa and in West Africa over the last few years. The Rand, the Naira, and the Cedi have all taken a beating. After weathering these storms, we all thought that we had seen enough of chaos and uncertainty to last us a lifetime. But that was not to be. Through all the past turbulences, nothing had prepared us for what COVID had in store. For the first time, no one had an answer. We've gone through a period where physical fear became the underlying factor, causing an unprecedented global lockdown. Now, as a family investment holding, we are currently invested in 15 emerging countries in IT, media, and education. Navigating through this period has called on tremendous inner resolve, focus, optimism, and planning for the long term. From a business perspective, as a former military veteran, I went to the default setting of holding our positions and then ensuring business continuity through the safety of our staff and the management of resources, mainly cash flow. The primary focus of our senior leadership has been on these values, as well as in frequent communications with stakeholders, especially our staff, to remove insecurities about the future. But this was not a period of fear of losing jobs or of losing money. It was a period when people were not sure if they would live through the Delta variant. Over the last 2 years, we have all sadly witnessed the untimely loss of close family and friends. This period has undoubtedly given all of us adequate time to introspect. My personal metamorphosis is a spiritual one. I believe that in the last 2 decades, society has forgotten its real purpose. As we talk about trillion-dollar companies, the growing $100 billion club, and the mindless expense of purchasing a social media company for $44 billion, the sad reality is that inequality has skyrocketed. Rather than seeking returns on ego, we need to go back to basics for better good. COVID has given us the opportunity to reflect on what is truly important, a chance to reset our lens, redefine our purpose, and build a society that is inclusive and, more than anything else, invest in our relationships. Sadly, just as the world was getting into a comfort zone of navigating the COVID pandemic, we find ourselves unwillingly immersed in the Ukraine crisis that will have far-reaching consequences on all nations. On one hand, the senseless destruction and loss of human life is heart-wrenching and cannot be condoned. But on the other, there is increasing global fragmentation and a realignment of geopolitical, bilateral, and multilateral partnerships. Now, for decades, we have embraced globalization. The current disrupted supply chains and over-reliance on international products, services, and systems have raised searching questions about globalization and the sustainability of our water, food, and energy security. Global leaders at the recently concluded World Economic Forum in Davos have, without exception, talked about the growing inflation and the impending global recession, which they codenamed Banana. As global institutions like the United Nations now falter, our governments and policymakers need to strengthen African multilateral institutions, trading blocs, and incentivize indigenization and capacity building. We need to make our borders and regulatory frameworks homogeneous, porous, and seamless across all industries. Business, on its part, needs to play its role by sourcing locally and ensuring that intracontinental trade and skills development is prioritized. Now, our visionary leaders have established the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Initiatives like the Pan-African Payment System needs to be escalated on a war footing to provide monetary security. Economic prosperity can only be ensured if we are self-reliant within our geographic spheres of influence. Now, as business leaders, an important moral value that we need to focus on is our responsibility towards people less fortunate than ourselves. As a family and a group, our activities championed by my wife, who's sitting here, Saloni, have been on education, destitute women, and progression for the girl child. In Africa, through the ABN Education Trust and the TAG Foundation, we provide bursaries to children for tertiary education and contribute to orphanages. Through our education business, we have provided bursaries in Dubai and in Ghana in excess of $10 million. In addition to this, we have a strong internship program to provide invaluable experience and induct youth into the workforce, and have provided over 300 internship opportunities in the group. Now, ladies and gentlemen, coming back to the matter at hand. ABLAs are about exceptional leadership across sub-Saharan Africa. We are here to celebrate success, and on behalf of all of you, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate all our finalists tonight. They, along with our distinguished alumni, represent African leadership at its best. I'd like to thank the judges led by Sam Bembe, who have toiled hard through a meticulous and fair process. Thank you to the ABN team led by Roberta Naiker for putting together this wonderful event. Amongst the guests today are our supporters, sponsors, and partners. On behalf of the ABN Group, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for your continued support and for making time to be here with us today. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful evening. And for my golfing friends present here, I look forward to welcoming you to the Lost City hazards and bunkers tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.